Hey, everybody, welcome back to another amazing episode of the Power Women in Insurance podcast. My name is Teresa Kitchens, your host, and I'm excited because we have another episode today with Colby Allen. And Colby Allen works directly with our very, very, very dear and amazing friend, Carrie Wallace, and with the agency. With AgencyFocus, and I am super excited because we are doing this financial uh, marathon. We're doing this financial series, right? We're doing this. And what this this is digging deep into what questions we need to be asking as agency leaders, agency owners. We did one just previously based on how to be able to pay your people, what questions to ask, how to be able to look at maybe what a producer would be looking for, a CSR would be looking for, and what an owner would be looking for, and how to be able to have those conversations across boundaries. Today, what we're going to be doing is talking about profit. What is profit? I think that especially when you're in the industry and you really hang out with people and you rub elbows, right? There's different definitions of profit. And profit could be, oh, I got, $500 on my credit card or $500 in my bank. And look at me, I made money this month, right? To some people, that's profit. To other people, it might be that you want to make sure that you have a certain percentage of profit and you want to grow such a percentage. Some people talk about profit as in, money in the bank. Some people talk about profit as in equity. Some people talk about profit as in what the businesses are going to be able to value your EBITDA at, or some what are they willing to lend you, right? So I have Colby Allen with me today. Sorry, Colby. I have
Thank you.
Colby Allen with me today, and we are going to be talking about all things profit. So Colby, welcome back.
Thank you. I decided to shake it up and I shaved between the first time we spoke and now. So,
No way. I'm
yeah,
super excited. I
which
feel
also gets rid of like what some people say 10 years off of my age. So,
gets rid of 10 years off of your age. You're hilarious.
that's fine.
Well, so Colby, you are with AgencyFocus. Tell us a little about you real quick as we get started. Tell us a little bit about your role with AgencyFocus and working with Carrie Wallace.
Sure. So, Agency Focus, we are a financial consulting company and firm specifically for independent insurance agencies. So, the conversation that we're going to have today is a conversation that I have every single day, if not multiple times a day, with agency owners.
Yeah.
And that is, how do you use the financial resources and information of your agency to make informed and valuable decisions? If
Yes.
that's planning for profit, if that's trying to become profitable, whatever that is in that conversation that's relevant and meaningful for you, we're going to help you figure out what it is and then figure out the steps to make that a reality.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start at the very beginning. Okay. So I think that as we grow up as a human being, right, we think, oh, if I can just get a job that makes me so much money, right? And we
Yep.
think that if I can just make so much money, that we're going to be quote unquote set for life. I think, especially when we get going, we have a career, maybe we just get our first job, maybe we get our first whatever. We think, oh, if my business can just make this much money, or if we think I can just get a job that pays me this much money. But then if I look in real life, if I go run up credit card bills, or if I go run up, if I get a really expensive place to live, I'm still not profitable, right? We still, in our day-to-day lives, if we don't manage what we're doing in a way that still promotes the lifestyle that we want, which means choices that we make, we are not going to feel like, even if we make $500,000 a year, but we spend $585,000 a year, right? It's
Yep.
not a profitable lifestyle. I think when we open up a business, we look at business the same way in a lot of ways, and it's not. I think that because of the fact that when we look at a business, we have team members, we have banks, maybe loans, maybe we want to be able to sell someday, maybe we want to acquire someday. All of those different conversations look at the word profit
Hmm.
differently. And if I just want to be able to, keep my doors open, that's a different conversation than if I want to go on out and do something different, like hire or be able to bring in another business as an acquisition. So, Colby, whenever you start having those conversations with people, how do you start them down the road of discussing and defining what profit means for them?
You nailed something that very few people, I think, articulate well. And that is, for a lot of people, your personal values on money in your personal life will influence your business decisions in a lot of
Mhm.
ways. And so it's not uncommon for an agency owner or a business owner to have a certain lifestyle outside of their business and that your business is often meant to be a vehicle to help you fund or support your lifestyle.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I'll go ahead and throw this out there. There's kind of different categories. You have lifestyle agencies and you have growth-minded agencies. Neither one, I would say, is a bad or the right or wrong way to do it, but I think you need to do it intentionally.
Mm.
I don't think it's a bad thing for an agency owner to want to fund a very good lifestyle for you and your family, but you need to make business decisions that are appropriate and adequate to make sure that that's done well.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
that's kind of like robbing from Peter to pay Paul kind of thing sometimes.
yes,
They
yes,
don't keep the big picture in mind because they need to be able to have so much money at home, right? Or they want to have so
exactly.
much money at home, right? Or so many vacations or so many whatevers. But then they look at their profit and loss, or they try to go to a bank and try to be able to get even maybe a line of credit, or maybe if they want to be able to purchase an agency, and all of a sudden they're upside down in the valuation of their business. I think does that happen pretty frequently, that if people are not really truly deliberate in how they build their business financially, that if they get into a position, then they go, oh, now I need to maybe change some things because, I didn't realize that I needed to do that to be able to accomplish these goals.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's not an uncommon agency owner that we meet that comes to us looking for help or service to where you've kind of just made decisions that stacked up over time, not really knowing how you're planning that direction. And then you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I have a ton of debt. And
Yeah.
now all these notes are due and I have to start making these payments. Or I have so many staff members and I'm noticing that my payroll is creeping up pretty heavily.
Yep.
So like making intentional decisions is necessary, but also I'll kind of go back to like part of your question that you asked. Where do we start?
Mhm.
A lot of times in our CFO process, we actually start by asking the agency owner, what are your personal goals? Do you need to maintain a certain level of income? Are you trying to achieve certain types of growth? Do you want to have a certain size of staff, right? So we kind of back into what their personal goals are. It's not always
Yeah.
about revenue. Revenue is actually kind of a derivative question and function of
Okay.
what are you trying to accomplish with the company?
Right.
Some people, they want to run their agency to fund nonprofits and be very charitable.
Mm.
Some people want to support their family and have a very healthy early retirement. Some people want to be a very prominent part of their community and employ a lot of people and add value to their community. So you really do need to kind of start with what are your personal values and what do you want to accomplish with your business so that you can design the business to try to make those things easily for you or more accessible for you to do. And so yes, it does translate into revenue. It translates into payroll. It translates into those things, but you have to know your why so that you
Mm.
can actually put in place the what and the how.
And I think one of the things we talk about a lot on this podcast is being authentic. And I think that we need to define that so that we can build a business that we feel feeds our soul. Because to me, if I have a business that does not feed my soul or the soul of my team members, then I don't care. I do care how much money it makes, but it's not my number one thing, right? Like I don't
Right,
want my
right.
team members to hate to go to work every day. Whereas I know some people don't care. They're like, I pay them to have a job. That's their job. That's what they're supposed to do. Right. But I will never ever forget, and I've talked about it multiple times on the podcast, is that when my husband, he's Mr. MBA, he's vastly intelligent, but he makes a lot of decisions based on a spreadsheet because to him it cuts out all the emotion. And I
Yep.
completely agree with that 100%. But one day I remember sitting in this office right here, and I'm actually working off of I actually work off a dining room table in an old dining room that we converted into an office. And I remember him sitting next to me and me saying, well, if my team members hate their life and their job, then I am an
Mhm.
epic failure. And he was like, what do you mean? You're making money. You're not a failure. And I was like, no, I don't want people to hate their lives. That to me is not running a business. That's running like a sweatshop. I don't
Wow.
want to
Yeah.
do that. And he just looked at me, and I remember him, and we've been together for 15 years. And we actually have episodes on here where we talked about the fact we were married and divorced and we were remarried. And
Mhm.
during the process of this business and the role that the business played in our divorce. Now, there was a lot of other things involved. I had teenagers, blah, blah, blah. You can go back and listen to that podcast. It was a long time ago. It's one of my favorite ones. But actually, there's two episodes because we did what contributed to the divorce, and then we did another one on how we recovered from the divorce and we remarried and reconnected and how we reblended our families in different ways. But
Wow.
I think that people don't understand that if we're not building an authentic business financially, personally, and based on our personal goals, I think people don't understand the toll that that takes on our soul and on all the other pieces. Because I could be the most profitable business in the world, make a ton of money, but if I walk in every day hating my life, that is not what I want to be able to do. So
Yeah,
I love the fact that y'all start with what do you want and how can we help you to achieve it? Because if all that, I'm not going to use the word all. If people really truly want that lifestyle agency to where it fuels their lifestyle, they can travel. They maybe are more of an owner that isn't involved in the day to day. Maybe they want to be an owner in the day to day. Like you said, I think knowing that vision, mission, and purpose of the agency owner and
yep,
how they see that is so core to helping people get what they want.
exactly. Yep. And it's knowing those foundational things that help you and we help you
Mm,
organize your financial resources and statements so that you can measure those things easily. And
nice.
so to kind of transitions into our conversation about profit, right? So we started with
Right.
profit, and that is looking at what is your profit goal? What does profit mean to you? Some high level ideas and thoughts, and then we'll get down to some technicals. But really, it's, again, what are your personal goals? What are the things you want to achieve? And then how do you back into that as a reasonable goal? So if your personal income goal is to make $100,000 a year, figuring out how you pay yourself with the salary versus commission, right? What do you need to get to in order to have that level of income?
Mm.
A couple other ways to really look at that more gritty is we often measure profit for performance reasons in a couple different ways on paper. And so if you look at your profit and loss statement, it's going to be ordered by your revenues at the top, your expenses in the middle, and at
Yep.
the bottom you have your essentially your net income or what's left over, profit or loss. And so how you organize your accounts to recognize the money that's coming in, the money that's going out, and then what you have left, you can have some flexibility in how you organize those things to measure what's important to you. So part of our process is there is a best practice chart of accounts to set up those things and how you track your expenses and ultimately track how much money is coming in and how much money is going out. But there's some flexibility in figuring out, again, what's important, how do we measure it, and how do we actually get those things easily accessible for help you make decisions.
Mm.
But back to like measuring profit in different ways. So a trap we often see agency owners fall into sometimes is relying on non-core income as part of their budget or their profit measures. And so,
So what is
off,
non-core income? Because I don't think that's a phrase I've ever heard before.
sure. So, another phrasing is either non-operating income or other income. And so, oftentimes when we look at a profit and loss statement, say you use QuickBooks, and there's one row that just says sales or commission income. Okay. Well, there could be different ways that that money is being deposited into that account, and that's going to be either agency bill, that's going to be a direct bill, that can be if you have P&C business versus benefit or life and health business.
Hmm.
Another one is actually distinguishing between your commission and fee income, which is your operating income, and common for a lot of agencies, profit sharing or bonus income.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like if you give a really great year when your bonuses are low or your losses are low, then all of a sudden you get, I don't know, $60,000, right? And all of a sudden, but that's not something you're guaranteed the next year. So that's what you're saying is not looking at your profit and loss based on that, taking out that information that may be more things that you might not necessarily get every year.
Sure. So when we recommend setting up a budget, oftentimes we try to analyze and look at, okay, what's your operating income, commissions and fees that
Mm,
are consistent and predictable, and what are your other sources of income that aren't as predictable or guaranteed? Because if you base your budget off of something that's very volatile or not guaranteed, you can very quickly find yourself in a place that's not profitable.
right.
This is actually a common problem that some agencies come to us with is they've historically gotten really good healthy profit sharing. They bake their agency budget using that money, and today's hard market, a lot of carriers are rethinking how they pay agencies and how they have those programs structured.
Yeah.
And they're being pulled or adjusted, and so agencies have their operating budgets, payroll, right? Benefits, your IT expenses dependent on some of that money, and it's no longer there. You can find yourself in a pinch very quickly.
Yeah.
And so we recommend measuring profit in really two different ways. One's going to be your operating profit, commissions and fees, and your operating expenses. Is that number at the end of the day black?
Mm,
Monthly basis or quarterly basis, annual, right? How do we measure those? And then you can bake into profit sharing. A lot of agencies might have investments or dividend income if you've got some reserves in an investment
right.
account. or premium finance income, right? If you have premium finance and they're sharing fees with you, a lot of those things that may not necessarily be consistent monthly or quarterly, et cetera, that's baked into your total pre-tax profit available
Mhm.
to you as an owner in many cases. But the nuances of that type of budget, a lot of agency owners don't really look at closely. And so, for instance, we'll get historical profit and loss statements for an agency for 3 to 5 years. And that account, their income is really high one year and low the next year. It might be high the next year. And so there's no consistency in how that income is looking.
Right.
But when we dig into the detail of, hey, what's your core commissions and fees versus what your other sources of income, it actually, in many cases, levels out and you can reasonably measure
Mm.
commission and fee growth versus your total income that's coming in. But we do that to help an agency owner really set a core budget or their profit goals based on things that are predictable and measurable.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff essentially can be lagniappe, right? I'm French, so that's a French word. Lagniappe, right? It's a little extra. Or you can bake in bonus programs with that money, right? You can do
Mhm.
other things, but the goal is to figure out, okay, what are your goals? How do you set up a plan so that it's predictable and measurable and more easily attainable?
Mm. I love
So
it. I love
another
it.
thing too
Yeah,
is
because
like,
I think people do look at their P&L and they don't think about really what goes into it. I mean, like as far as like what they may or may not get back, they just go, "Oh, look, we had a really good year." Oh, well,
yeah,
that's because you got profit sharing. Whereas next year you don't. And I'm in Texas, right? So, and I know you're down in Louisiana, so you understand. We can have a really good year and we can have a really bad year the next year.
mhm,
I mean, it just it does. It's something that we have to make sure that we plan for accordingly.
sure. And also too, profit is relative for a lot of agencies, a lot of people. And it's going to also be not necessarily a measure of like things that you can't control per se, excuse me, but trying to really look at, again, predictability, things that are consistent, and also your core income. People go into insurance because of renewals,
Yeah.
right? It's that base that's foundational of every year we've got a pretty high likelihood that 90 to 92, 93% of our revenue is going to be here next year.
Yep.
And so looking at, what is that actual foundational part of your business that you can continually grow over time gives you one more confidence as an owner to say, okay, well, this is what I can actually move the needle on. This is what I can use as capital to then allocate those resources and things that are important that I'm going to get a return on. And that's the other part of it too. To when you set up your profit and loss statement, one thing that we recommend is you've got a couple major buckets. First, in most cases, is your compensation. What's your payroll and what's your benefits for your people? Your people are, in most cases, your most important asset because
Yeah.
they are what drive everything.
Yeah.
And so organizing your profit and loss statement to look at, okay, how do I measure these things quickly, easily, efficient, so that I can look at, okay, what are my compensation expenses?
Mm.
What are my selling and marketing expenses? And then what are my operating expenses? Rent, IT, right? Those types of things. And so it's not uncommon to see some agency owners just use the very default chart of accounts that's in QuickBooks. And they've got some decent descriptions in there, but it doesn't capture everything that's relevant for agencies.
Mm.
Another thing we see is that agency owners have their profit and loss statement so detailed that we actually consolidate it because it's a little overkill.
Yeah.
You don't need a separate account for every single carrier that you get commission from, right?
Right.
You can
Right.
actually track that either as a vendor or your payables or, where you get your actual money from. So there are some cases where that can make sense, but we try to find a healthy balance of how is it detailed to where we can measure things that are important, but also not so detailed that we actually have to do extra work to analyze it.
Right.
And it's by having that set in place that you, as a manager, as an owner, or hire us as your fractional CFO, right, can sit down and very quickly and easily look at, okay, what's the profit goal that we set? What are we going to use this money for? And then what's our progress and how are we actually making, direction and what we're trying to accomplish?
I
And
like
so
it.
part of our budgeting process, again, is at the beginning of the year or whatever your fiscal year is setting up a reasonable forecast. Cash flow forecasting is part of that to see how much we have coming in versus going out. Because another thing we could talk about later is not every expense is recognized on a profit and loss statement
Okay.
because you have different types of cash and capital that you use in your agency. One's going to be your actual operating expenses, so things you pay and you can deduct from taxes. Other things like owner distributions or owner draw are actually not treated on a profit and loss statement. And so reconciling your actual net income to cash available and what you can do with it is also very important for agency owners because it's very common.
Mhm.
You set up as an S corp, you do it for tax efficiency. You might
Yep.
pay yourself a basic salary, but then the rest of your income might be a K1 distribution
Right.
that you're taking the cash out, but you don't have like K1 distribution as a line item on your profit and loss statement in most cases. So planning your cash and how you're going to use it, planning for your profit, how you're going to use it is it's important.
It is. It is. And I think it also goes into at the end of the year that and just because we do some commercial insurance in our agency, we find that a lot of people um the business, and I'm talking about business owners in general, right? They get into this tax season and all of a sudden they don't realize that they owe all this money in taxes. And I think that as an agency owner, I did not understand that when I first really got
Mm.
into it, right? That was something that I had never done the business finances of a business before. And so I think getting in there, and so many people are salespeople that go on out and then they go on out and they open up an agency, right? Because they can do it better, and they don't realize that they think they have all this money in their account, and they don't realize at the end of the year, when it comes down to tax season, that's a totally different conversation. So,
Yep.
how we pay ourselves, what benefits we have, what benefits we give our team, how we run it, where we spend our money goes into that whole conversation about how much it just too. We can think all year long that we're having a great year, and then all of a sudden our tax bill comes in, and all of a sudden we're like, oh my goodness, and it freaks everybody out. So I know that that can be something that really throws off people's expectations of profit too, is that they think that they're doing great. They go file their taxes. They're thinking they could take out an extra bonus this year, whatever. Maybe they've lived a little lower than they wanted to with this expectation. And then all of a sudden the tax bill comes in, and so
Yep.
forth. So I know that that categorization is huge.
Yep. Yeah. Because some things can be deducted differently. Also, I think it's kind of funny, but some people, Uncle Sam is their absolute mortal enemy and they don't want to give him a dollar.
Yep.
And so if you look at an agency's profit and loss statement based on how their corporation is set up, they actually on paper are not making any money
Hmm.
because they burn every dollar as an expense through the company to try to get every deduction they can. And so that's another reason that we really do this analysis to look at, okay, what's the actual profitability of the agency? And then we look at comparing that to or deducting from those things, what are seller discretionary expenses? Sorry, owner discretionary expenses
Okay.
to actually drill down to, okay, what is the actual profitability of the agency and achieving your goals versus what are you doing as a tax strategy to not pay taxes per se?
Right.
Because you mentioned earlier at the very beginning in the intro, like measuring EBITDA as a way to value the company and be able to exit. Well, here's a wake up call for a lot of people. If you value the agency on your actual EBITDA, for most agencies, they're worth dirt. They're worth zero.
Really? Okay.
because
Because that's
because on
that's one of the
paper,
big things everybody talks about. And when you go to the bank, they're like, "Oh, we can loan you based on your EBITDA," right? So we have
yep,
to pay attention to EBITDA, but
yep.
yet at the same point, you're saying that doesn't necessarily define the valuation of an agency.
Well, there's a difference between actual EBITDA and pro forma EBITDA, where you
Okay.
distill down to the seller discretionary earnings or owner discretionary earnings. And so, yes, if an agency is spending a lot to optimize taxes, again, on paper, there's very little profit, if not a loss. But when we actually do a true analysis to see, okay, what are the actual core income sources? Predictable. What are the actual core expenses to run and operate the agency? And then look at, okay, well, what are the expenses the owner might be running through here to reduce their tax burden
Right.
that may not be actually relevant to the operations of the agency? And so we try to categorize those things to
You
look
told me
at,
my Netflix isn't required for my agency.
if it's if there are learning opportunities for your staff or staff movie days as a benefit, it could be.
I'm just kidding with you. I'm just kidding with you. No, I mean, and I have this
I
conversation
could
with a
tell
lot
you
of
some
agency
stories.
owners, but we kind of wrap in little things here and there to be able to make sure we get little things as a write off. Not necessarily Netflix, but you know what I mean.
Yep.
We go to a conference and we add an extra day, kind of thing as part of it. There's little things that we do that we need to make sure we understand what the ramifications of those are.
So one of my first jobs in the industry, I used to manage producer travel and entertainment expenses for a large agency. Okay. So every month, the producers would send me their expense report with the receipts, fingers crossed with the receipts.
Yep.
And then I had to go through and try to verify is this an actual business expense per our policy, or is this something we're not reimbursing? And the amount of times that I had to tell a producer, we're not paying for your wife's spa treatment when you went to CIC, I would be a rich man, right? Or some expenses that were crazy. There were some producers that had expense accounts that were larger than my entire annual salary,
Oh my
right? But
goodness.
but they
Right.
generated that much business.
Right.
But even still, there was a difference between producers that would manage their expenses well for legitimate business stuff, and some that would try to pass things off that, they're just trying to get the expense run through to
Yep.
save the P&L, right? But yeah, to your point, measuring actual operating profit and actual EBITDA for the agency can be a process if you don't run clean financials.
Mm.
One trap that we also have as part of that conversation is, while you might consider them discretionary expenses, it can become tricky if, say, you have, for example, a very high client entertainment budget.
Okay.
So if your clients are used to a level of wining and dining or a certain level of treatment, and a new owner steps in and they no longer have that same philosophy, that
Mm.
could actually be problematic for some retention.
Yep.
So even though that on paper is a legitimate business expense, how you actually use your expenses to run and drive value in the agency can have medium to long-term impacts that you may not be thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's even gray area of, okay, this is actually a legit expense, but is this how someone else would actually manage or run these resources?
Yeah.
It's a question.
It is. It is. And I remember the first agency that I had acquired, they had I felt like a substantial Christmas gift budget. I mean, I felt like it
Mm.
was a lot. Like I did Christmas gifts for my clients, but I did not spend that kind of money on everything. And like it was big. It was big. And I don't think I respected that as well as I should have, what the change would mean to the clients. And
Mm.
like we had always sent out like gimmies, gifts, things like that, but they weren't like, I don't know. They weren't like $25 a person, for every
Sure.
single client. And she did it across the board, whether or not it was a renter's policy or a this or a that. And
Wow.
it was totally a new philosophy to me. I was like, no, we send out little gifts, but I mean, we're not going to do like $50 a person, or $50 a client. So, but I know that we did have a couple people call in and they go, "Oh, well, I didn't get my gift this year or whatever." And it was like, "No, that was it." Kind of thing. Like we did this like, combo, we did this like tool that you could break your window with or whatever, like that
Oh
you
yeah, yeah.
that you
Like
like
a
a
car, like
safety
safety tool.
tool, and
Yep.
it like cuts your your
Seatbelt and
seatbelts and stuff like that. I thought it was pretty cool. I mean, it was like $10. We thought that was pretty significant, right? But
Mhm.
we had some people call and go, "Oh, that was it," and we're like, well, I'm sorry you didn't get your, honey baked ham this year. I mean, but so what we decided to do is we decided to, categorize and level and tier our clients, where the ones that
Sure.
spent up with so much money, they got so much. And then, but I mean, she was doing like $25, maybe even a little bit more than that. It was like a little bit more than that. But anyway, like for everybody. And like, that's more than a renter's insurance is for. Why would we send them something for $25 when that's not even our commission per year? So I think that there are some people that you have to really look at some of that, right? Because I think it
Yeah,
does change how people look at you. And I think we need to be aware of that. But we need to make sure when we look at our profit and what we're willing to spend on things, we take that into consideration.
exactly. And also that goes back to what we started our conversation with, is knowing what type of owner are you and what are you
Mhm.
using the agency for,
Yep.
and how are you going to manage those resources based on your goals. And so um, this is also a common trap, and we kind of said this before we started recording, but a lot of owners and a lot of small business owners run their business with the motion of looking at the operating account. Is the number in the black, we're okay. All right. As long as that number doesn't go negative, or I'm dipping into my trust account to pay operating expenses, right? Then you got legal issues.
Yep.
But if, as long as the operating account is black and we're paying our expenses and our payroll and we're doing okay. But if you operate with that idea or that mindset, it's very difficult to set medium and long-term goals and be able
Mhm.
to reasonably attain them.
Yeah.
Unless you just happen to be some unicorn producer that can just generate business like nobody's looking, and you're just a rainmaker and the money just comes in and you have no idea where it's coming from. Most people don't have that problem though, right?
No. No.
And so knowing, again, some medium long-term goals And then again, making the steps and the plan on how am I going to use these monies and these resources to do what I want to do. 'Cause that's the
Mm,
thing. You start a business because you want to do certain things.
yeah.
You want the lifestyle, you want the nice car. Again, you want to support your community, you want to support your nonprofits, but you have to organize your resources to do that. You know, actually, one of my mentors in business growing up, I'm 36, I'm not that old, but um, he would always say that, like impact comes from taking complacent ideas and turning them into simple deeds. And
Mm,
so really what that means is, like you're not going to go anywhere unless you make small, meaningful decisions that stack up and
yep.
build up
Every
over time.
day.
So like you had this in our email and you heard me say this before, but business is not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Yeah.
And it's the combination of training, preparation, and then making deliberate, disciplined decisions over a longer period of time that really adds up to something very valuable.
Yep.
Because I can tell you, you can see the same agency, same level of revenue, same client mix, and one is barely running, say, a 5% profit margin.
Mm,
The other can be running a 30 or 35% profit margin.
yeah.
It's all in the decisions that owner is making and what their really long-term and personal goals are for that profit. And so if you want to support people, fantastic, right? But set up an agency and system and resources to do that. If you want to extract as much as you can so that you can make investments and retire at 40, great. You could do that, but you got to set up a system and a process to measure and do those things well. And so what we offer agency owners is, again, starting that process. What are your personal goals? What resources do you have available? How do we, as a fractional CFO, right, or financial advisor, help you set up your resources and ways that we measure those
Right.
things so that okay, I'm making progress, I'm doing great, or hey, we're kind of off track. We've tried this and this, it's not working. Maybe we should pivot and adjust our strategy. Because if you don't set a medium or long term goal, again, if you're shooting at a target blindfolded, right, it's
Yep.
a little bit harder to hit the bullseye.
So I think as an agency owner, the part of that conversation scares me. And I think the
Mhm.
big conversation is letting somebody into my junk, letting somebody into my, if I had a really nice dinner out at a conference, that might have been a little bit more exorbitant than I really intended it for it to be, right? Or um, I get really I think a lot of people we because we do take our businesses so personally and we
Yep.
do take our personnel personally. We don't want somebody to come in and go, "Oh, you have too much payroll or you have too much this or you have too much this." How do y'all kind of help agency owners through the emotional process of
Mhm.
divulging all of this information and yet being open to changing our ways? Because I think it's like anything else, we have to be ready for that change, right? We have to be
Yeah.
ready to have those hard conversations. And I think we have to be mentally and emotionally prepared in a way that then we can meet y'all at the table. Cause I'm sure that there are probably people like, oh, I should do this. And so then they go on off and they should do it. And then
Yep.
they get there and they're like, well, that's private information. Or they sit back and go, I don't know. I don't just, yeah, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Right. I think I can definitely see that that would be a really big challenge that people really need to make sure they're emotionally ready to step into that arena. But when they do, they're going to feel so much better. They're going to feel like they have a handle on it. They're going to feel like they know what's going on. I'm sure it takes away a lot of the stress and the anxiety of maybe perpetuation type conversations or, can I afford to hire somebody else to be able to come into my agency? I'm sure that it allows the, the agency owner to have a partner in those conversations rather than feeling like we've got to somehow, shake the magic 8 ball and figure out if we can go ahead and do something this month. I mean, do you find that it gives do you find what is that journey like that you guys find for insurance agent? And the main reason I say that is because I think people need to be
Mhm.
prepared for it. I think it's
Yeah.
great to be able to have a sexy conversation where, oh, we're going to get your finances in place and we're going to get you all ready. We're going to make you super profitable and you're going to know da 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 da. That's a sexy super conversation. But I
Yep.
also think it does not take into consideration the work that's going to go into it, the time, the transparency,
Yep.
the need for people to be mentally and emotionally available so that if they need to make changes then they do. How do y'all walk people through that conversation and that process?
I heard something recently, people that do say like counseling or relationship advice, they often say that sometimes it's easier for people to talk about sex than it is about money,
Yeah.
which is crazy. Like it blows my mind. I'm a numbers guy, or like I'm a money guy, right? That's just my life. But it's like for people to be more willing to talk about like the most intimate part of yourself
Hmm.
physically and emotionally versus something that is not like physically or tangibly like on your person, like it blows my mind. But yeah,
Well,
to
but I think
your
it goes back to, and I think one of the things people need to really consider, and I hate to interrupt you, is that like you mentioned, we run our business a lot like we run our personal finances, right? And
yep,
I
yep,
know that if I have had a traumatic experience, either maybe like my family that I was raised in, wonderful, loving, amazing family, but not financially um nurturing. Like we
yeah,
never had a conversation about, like, I got allowance, but I never got a conversation about what to do with it when I was a kid.
mm,
I never had a conversation about 401ks or savings or retirement. I have, to this moment, I can honestly say I've asked, because my parents were divorced. I've asked my biological father and my stepfather, because they're both in their 80s. My stepfather turns 80 early in April, and then
yeah,
my biological father's 84. And I've literally said, when you die, what are we supposed to do? Like, I have no idea. And
yeah,
both of them have looked at me and goes, we'll figure it out. And I'm like, you're gone. What are you going to be figuring out? Like, where am I supposed to go look? What do you want? Where do you want, how do you want it? Whatever. And
yep,
my biological father even goes, it's all taken care of. You don't have to worry about it. And I'm like, but I will worry about it in that moment, because as soon as I
yep,
get that call that something's happened, I'm going to be worrying about it, right? So
right,
that's the family that I come from. I come from a very a little bit more of a judgmental, what'd you do with your money, but no like real help to be able to get there. And even when I ask questions, I feel like I don't always get those answers. So I find that I go out of my way to not ask those questions,
mm,
because of the concept that I have a lot of fear around them for judgment on me. Well, you don't need to know my business, right? That kind of thing. So I think that we have to be, that, like I said, that mentally prepared, but we also have to take into consideration, it's almost like a therapist, right? That
yeah,
you
yeah,
guys have to help me mentally be okay with it. And I know that back to my husband, when we first got together 15 years ago, I was 3 years behind on my tax returns. I had no idea where any of my money was on any level, personally or professionally. And if we have an argument, it's typically about money,
hmm,
but it's not really about money. It's more along the lines about what's knowing, and the fact that we just process that information differently. And
right,
so I think that knowing that is really the number one thing, because like you said, that's how we're going to relate to y'all, is
yeah.
based on how we relate to money on a personal level.
When also to maybe illustrate something, and money is for many people a way that you do communicate who you are to your community,
Mm,
to your family, to your
true.
friends, versus, compared to like what you have, the trips you take, or the vehicle you own, or those types of things. A lot of people desire to have a certain image or persona
Yep.
that they want other people to perceive. You can't really
So
control
true.
people's perceptions about you. And until you actually, like reveal the curtain and allow people to, trust and respect your vulnerability in that moment, you don't know. And there's risk in that, right? That's
There
part of the
is.
problem. And where the fear comes, that's risk.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I have seen things in agencies that I can't tell you because I'm under NDA, right?
Right.
So for an agency owner to come to me and be embarrassed about their P&L being disorganized, I'm like, nah, man, you can chill. Like,
And
we can
I,
talk, okay?
I think that's one of the things I want, is because I mean, I guess I've worked with Carrie, and I love the fact she was like, "Girl, you're good," and I was like,
Yeah,
there was something about that like she didn't
yeah,
need to tell me how good I was. I don't need the details. There was something about that affirmation when
yep,
she was like, "Girl, you're good," because I'd be like, "Oh my gosh," and I would like be trying to explain everything away. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, Carrie, you just, oh my god, you don't even understand," like did it, and she's like, "Girl, you're good, just chill." And when just that little bit of affirmation to me, I walked away like on air, like on cloud nine, going, okay, we're doing a good job. But I
yeah,
think I was really afraid that going into it, I would not be as
mm,
good at going into it. I was expecting, I think in my mind, a little bit more of what my history has been of well, I'm not really gonna talk you through it. I just want to be able to judge you for where you are, right? Rather than
Yeah.
inspiring you to be able to do the things you need to do and tell you that you're awesome where you are. But hey, let's, if you want to be able to be in a more safe place, or you want to be able to accomplish these goals, that's how you do it. But the reality is it's your choice. And
Yeah.
we have to step over some of those feelings in that process. And I think just sometimes hearing that you're good is it's very helpful for me emotionally.
There's only been a handful of times when I've opened up some files and had a conversation with owners that my eyebrows raised, and I was like, okay, like we need to actually have a real conversation right now.
Right.
But in most cases, yeah, we do historical analysis and historical review to understand where you're coming from. But the part of being a fractional CFO and a financial advisor is it's not being judgmental on what you did. It's okay, where are we today? Where do we want to be in the future? And let's look forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so, yeah,
A baby
finances,
step.
80,
Every day is just a baby step towards where you want to go. And that includes our finances.
right, right. And
Not
I'll give
just
a
our
very,
team, not just education, not just, hey, let's, go take your CIC course or something, right? It's
yeah,
not just about a lot of people put so much time into all the initials behind their name, but they don't put enough time into making sure that they're running a profitable, wonderful business that's actually going to help them to attain their goals.
exactly. And I'll give a very, very personal example of what you're asking. And so right now, you mentioned like your parents, right? Or your father and stepfather. Right now, my family is going through some life transition planning. My father is ill, and he's been a business owner for 30 years. I worked for him for 5 years when I was in late high school and early college, and there's a reason I don't work for him anymore, right? And I'll leave it
Right.
at that. But we're going through this process right now of trying to transition him out of his business, and
Mm,
it is surfacing a lot of the things that are very unpleasant to talk about.
yeah.
And before, there's been a few times like he's come to me in life and asked for my help for a couple things. And because of my experience and expertise of helping business owners transition through different stages, he asked me to help him.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I'm going through this. Like, can you help me get this, in check? And we always start, him and I, we've had some very, very intentional conversations, right, throughout our life, and usually try to position it with, we're going to have some things said that you probably don't like, but I
Hmm.
want you to know it's because I love you as my father and I want to help you, not because I'm bitter or hurt or right.
Right.
There's things coming from there. I'm not judging you. I want to help you figure out what we have and how we can make the best out of it.
Yep.
And yeah, there've been a few times where, like we start getting to his company and get the hard questions that are starting to surface. And it's personal.
Yeah.
It's personal. It
It
hurts
is.
for both
It
of
is.
us.
I find it very interesting. People who love numbers, they love numbers because they're consistent and they're not personal, but yet personal money and numbers are very personal to everybody else.
Yeah.
Like a true numbers person loves them because they're not personal.
Yeah.
But for everybody else it's so personal. I'm sure that can be a very challenging space for a lot of people, especially when discussing profit, because like you said, it goes into our lifestyle, it goes into how we take care of our team, it goes into how we take care of our family, and a lot of our personal identity. So everybody out there, I just really want to encourage everybody to take a really serious look at the word profit. What does it mean for you? Emotional profit, physical profit, financial profit, right? Because it's not just about the P&L at the end of the day. Because anything can come on in, and like he's talking about concrete or like stable income, right, is different from those extra one-offs that you get. We need to take that into consideration. We need to take into consideration our team, how many team members we have, what are we bringing to the table for them, are we giving them options for benefits, is that something we should do, need to do, can do, won't do, all of those things. And then same thing for us, what do we want, are we gonna pretty much create a business that's pretty much like a coal mine, right? We're just going to strip out all the natural resources and leave whatever's behind, right? And for some people that's their goal, and that's fine. But we have to define that to be able to get to the emotional profit as well as the personal profit, the financial profit, the environmental profit, and maybe in our community, in the areas that we want to be able to give back to, whatever we go ahead and contribute to. So as we talk about profit, we do start with the term of money and knowing what you're doing, but really it's because it fuels so many other things that it's so important
Yep.
to be just honest and transparent in that conversation.
Yep. And a lot of times our service as a coach, like, yes, understanding your financials are a core component of what we do, but the vast majority of the conversation that we have is going to be a sounding board and helping mull through those decisions and helping figure out, okay, are these the right decisions and how can we do this well? Or how can we do this to where it's a value for our stakeholders? And so, yes, the numbers help to fuel those decisions, but ultimately it is, what do you value and how can you make that happen?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Colby, if people want to work with you or work with Agency Focus specifically about some of these conversations or open up some of these conversations, how can they reach out to you so that way they can go ahead and start that ball rolling?
Sure, I'll give the shameless plug. I actually just published an article, a practical guide to profit and loss statements for agency owners. And so
Nice.
if you go to our website, agency-focus.com, and head to our blog, you can read that. And there's a free downloadable resource, chart of accounts for P&L statements. That if you want to look at it and use it as a resource, you're welcome to have that free. But if you want to reach out directly, my email is Colby, Colby at agency-focus.com. Or our contact page, you can see both mine and Carrie's calendar if you want to hop on and introduce yourself.
I love it. I love it. And Carrie and the team there have built a wonderful network. I will tell you from personal experience, because I personally worked with Carrie, that they are loving and kind and generous. And they really help to be able to take that conversation and really make sure that you build the business and the agency and the profit and the financial conversation to be able to propel our lifestyles forward. So I highly recommend them. Love them. I need to go back and refresh some things now that we've gone through this other acquisition back in September. So I definitely need to do that. So Colby, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for also sharing your insights and your wisdom because even though you invited me to share, I'm always learning from you as well. So appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Everybody, this is another amazing episode of Power Women in Insurance Podcast, where we help your future, you, your business, all the things around you to be able to level up, to be better, where we highlight women in the insurance space and have those conversations that help to be able to promote what you want out of your career. Everybody, make sure you check us out on Apple iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, all the places. And you can go ahead and check us on out. We have a new episode every single Wednesday. Everybody, again, my name is Teresa Kitchens. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'll talk to you next week.